before. Have you heard about the nerds? What's the word? Teacher nerds. You can tweet them out on Twitter, you can find them on the gram. After listening to their podcast, you'd be sitting there like, BAM! Trying to take the teaching from one level to the next, reaching up to Canada and down to Mexico. Gotta go. Teacher nerds. Start the show.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Teacher Nerds Podcast. I'm Ron Nober.
I'm Joe DiPaolo.
I teach technology, 3rd grade to 8th grade.
And I'm a 3rd grade teacher.
All right, so Joe, you want to introduce our guest? I know she's a friend of yours.
Yeah, I do. Guys, I would like to introduce today our special guest. Her name is Dr. Kimberly Lynn Clark. She is currently the vice principal at Pinelands Regional Junior High School, although she started out as a Spanish teacher at Oakcrest. Dr. Clark is a practicing researcher who focuses on the topics such as educational leadership, leadership development, feminist theory, gender performance, and non-traditional administrative preparation. She has 3 beautiful children and 1 adorable husband who I'm lucky to call one of my best friends. She recently had a birthday. Dr. Clark, happy birthday.
Hey, happy birthday.
And welcome to the Teacher Nerds Podcast Show.
Thanks, guys. I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for having me today.
Yo, thanks for joining us.
And this is, for other people who don't know, this is take 2. Last time didn't work out so well.
Teacher Nerds had some issues,
Yeah.
but we got tissues for those issues, and we're ready to move on.
So as always, we start our podcast with our 2 yes more, 1 no way, and it's Burger Edition.
Burger Edition is going to be interesting, that's for sure.
It's time for 2 yes more, 1 no way.
All right, so Dr. Clark, do you want to start us off? Your 2 yes type of burgers and 1 no way you wouldn't try.
Absolutely. So this is going to be interesting because I eat a plant-based diet, so I'm a vegan.
Okay.
So my yes more would actually be Gardein veggie burgers. I think that they are the tastiest out of all of the plant-based burgers that you're going to get. And I've tried them all, I feel like, at this point, and I think that they're flavorful. They don't taste like a burger, but I don't expect them to taste like a burger. If I wanted a burger, I would eat a burger.
Okay. Now, Gardein, is that the Gardein's, like the brand?
Yes.
Okay.
The Gardein veggie burger. So, and my other yes more, and I actually got this from a place called Woody's on LBI.
Yes.
Is any burger, any of the veggie burgers, but with an onion ring on it.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit of barbecue sauce.
Nice.
And avocado.
The
onion ring is really what I think makes the burger. It adds just a little bit of crunch.
Right.
Yeah.
Texture is big.
Yep.
Texture is big when you're eating. But now you like
fried actually makes it a little tastier too. You get a little fat in there, and who doesn't like that?
Right.
Well, you like the onion ring better than the avocado. Like you said, avocado, and to me that made it.
Oh, I will at home. I'll do an avocado, but if I have a choice, like if I go to a restaurant, I want an onion ring on my burger.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that little bit of fried goodness, for sure. Yeah.
It just adds something, It's
Yes.
like having French fries with your burger.
Yeah, absolutely.
They just go hand in hand.
It adds
The
calories.
first time I had it on there, you just couldn't not. Now that's what I want when I have a burger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what about a no way?
Well, I mean, that I feel like I should have maybe started with no way is any burger that is made with meat. So my no way would be a real burger.
Right.
Okay. And that's why there's chocolate and vanilla ice cream.
Yeah.
There's everyone gets their choice.
Yep.
Ron, you want to go next?
All right. So my 2 yes more. One of them has to be local place here, Vincenttown Diner.
Yes.
Has a delicious burger. It's called the Big Dipper Burger.
Okay.
And it's a burger, and it comes with au jus gravy.
Oh.
And has the onion ring on top, and you can dip into the au jus gravy as you eat your burger. It is delicious.
It sounds like a French dip.
Yeah, kind of like a French dip, but
So
burger.
is it a better burger? Is it a better beef?
I mean, they use a pretty high quality beef.
Okay.
And then just that little, that dip of the au jus.
Oh, yeah.
Delicious.
Meat juice is great.
Yeah. My other one, and I'm not a huge fan of the restaurant PJ Whelihan's,
Okay.
but they have a burger and it's taking onion dip, like the old style chips and dip.
Yeah, like a ranch onion dip.
Yeah, well, like the onion dip with like sour cream and onion dip, or the old soup, dried soup, and they smear that on the top of the burger. And that's delicious.
Okay.
So that's pretty good. My one note.
That's not something I would think to put on a burger either.
Right.
I wouldn't either, and it's delicious. And when I tried that, I started, because I'll eat at home. I'll eat like veggie black bean burgers, and I started putting hummus on the burger instead. That was delicious. So. But my one no way has to be any kind of like fish burger, like the salmon burger or the tuna burgers. I'm not like fish and burger just doesn't go together for me.
Okay. My no way is going to be similar to that. But I'll when you say no kind of fish burger.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like a shrimp burger, I could probably go with, but like the salmon or tuna, it's not so much.
Okay. Well, I feel I'll start with my no way then, because my no way is going to be a salmon burger. Definitely, and I love salmon.
Right. Oh yeah.
But as a salmon burger, I definitely couldn't handle it. My two yeses, one of them is definitely a bacon cheeseburger.
Ooh,
Now, Kim, I will say this: when we went snowboarding at Jack Frost, I believe there's a little brewery. They brew their own, and they have a huge veggie menu. And for the first time, Dylan tried a burger made from black beans.
Yep.
Really?
Now, yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, it was good. And because I do like burgers, so
real burgers.
real burgers,
burgers,
well, meat burgers,
Meat
like
burgers.
I've been working on my plant-based diet and having shakes for breakfast and salads for lunch. I think that's a great way to get those vegetables in there. So my first go would be a regular cheeseburger with bacon on top, American cheese. I wouldn't mind having a black bean burger.
Right.
But my first choice would be a regular meat burger. My second yes is going to be a tuna burger. But now, just a piece of tuna. Like
not ground up.
No,
Okay,
not ground up. Like just a piece of tuna on a roll with avocado, a little bit of that fancy lettuce, like not iceberg, but maybe some of that red lettuce on top. And then it's the Cherry Hill Grill in the Cherry Hill Mall. It's a type of wasabi type of spread on the top. So
nice.
and it is delicious.
Nice.
So those are my two yeses and one no way as far as burgers go.
Sounds good. I think we may have invented a term, the meat burger. That's going to be the hashtag for the show, hashtag meat burger.
With a side of meat juice. You can't go wrong.
All right. So to get back to serious, I mean, the topic that we're going to discuss today, gender and all in the classroom and transgender students, I think is an important topic, and I think one that sometimes teachers are a little afraid to discuss or ask questions about because you're worried you're going to offend someone, and but I think deep down most teachers at heart really want to include all students,
everyone. And I think it's cool. I was talking to the guy that runs Dylan's dojo, and I was telling him about the show we're doing, and he said, Joe, can you forward me the show? Because I would like to listen to that. He goes, because
it's going to be he's a teacher too.
He said, whether or not I have them yet, I'm going to get those types of students, and I would, I don't know anything about it. So I did forward him, Dr. Clark, the article that you wrote that you sent me that was published. I sent him that, and then I told him, this is what she wrote. It's got that grade index in there that talks about the terms. And then I said, as soon as we do our show, I'll send you to the link. So I know, it's something that teachers should be concerned with, but coaches and I think anyone that really deals with kids should kind of know these terms and how to help these types of students.
Yeah, I think it's awesome.
So
and that's one of the reasons that I really got interested in the topic to begin with, is that it was a term that was new, that had just come out. A lot of the students but a few students in our school were dealing with it. And, we're starting to identify as transgender, or trying to figure out what they were in the LGBTQ plus world. And I wanted to not just educate myself, but once I became educated on the topic, share with others, so that people felt a little more comfortable with, what they can do to help their students, to support their students. I think that's like the most important thing. If there's anything that anyone's going to get out of this conversation, is if you're interested in this because you want to do something right for students, you're coming from a place of support and love and care, and you're already on the right track.
Awesome.
You don't really have to worry about offending people if you are trying to help them, and you express that to them, that you are doing this, and you're asking them questions because you want to be helpful, and you want to be respectful to them.
Awesome. So where would you if we're going to start this conversation, what would be the starting point, where you would like to take us from?
I feel like we just need to start with some common terms.
Okay.
What are we talking about when we're talking about different things? Because I think that that's where a lot of people get confused. What is the difference between gender and sex? What's the difference between gender identity and sexual orientation? I feel as if some of those terms start getting muddled, and we need to start from a place of understanding.
So they're not synonymous, right? Like one term can't be applied to every student that's not pretty much a straight student, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's why there's so many of those terms, LGBTQ plus,
right?
Because there are so many ways that people will self-identify, and they also talk about different things. So let's, I think, start with the difference between gender and sex.
Okay.
Since we're talking about transgender today.
Right.
And so when we're talking about sex, we're actually talking about the biological characteristics that somebody has, the physical attributes that they're born with. So when we're talking about sex, we're not just talking about that fun thing that happens, but we're talking about, what the parts that people are born with, that, that females are born with lactating breasts, that men, I should say males, are born with, penis, testicles.
Right.
That's more talking about sex. That's what we're talking about.
Okay.
And that's distinct from gender. Gender is actually a social creation. So when we're talking about gender, we're talking about attributes, socially defined behaviors, actions that we expect that a man and a woman, might have in our society. So,
and before we started, Ron and I were talking about. Ron used to his prior field was anthropology.
Okay.
And there are a lot of cultures where there aren't just two genders. It's not just male and female. There are multiple genders, and it was when I took classes in anthropology, it opened my eyes to kind of go like, oh, that's surprising, but it's, and these are, centuries old cultures. These aren't, this isn't a new culture. These are new, old cultures that, this is not uncommon.
Right.
It's uncommon for us, I think.
I think it's uncommon for us because we are accustomed to our own culture.
Right,
So
exactly.
When we think about a man and a woman, we think about certain things. When we think about a woman, we think about somebody who's wearing a skirt and high heels.
Right.
We also think about certain professions. We tend to think of like childcare as a woman's profession. We tend to think of, police officer, professional athlete. We think of men when we think of those professions.
So maybe the first thing teachers should start doing, especially in the younger grades, is kind of, breaking down those gender roles maybe, and talking about could a girl be a fireman?
Right.
Or could a dad be the stay-at-home parent and make sure kids get on the bus, and when they get off the bus, so maybe that's a place for them to start.
And I think even starting with terms, like you immediately said fireman. So
Right, fire
thinking about
person.
the fire person.
Yeah.
Right. Or
Yep.
firefighter.
Correct. Firefighter, police officer instead
Right.
of policeman. And I definitely do think that that's a great place to start. Also, maybe looking at the books and the literature
Sure.
that is available in the classroom. What text are you using with the students, and what is included in there? What are the professions that the individuals, that the protagonists, antagonists in the book have?
So read alouds in the earlier grades and maybe novel studies in
Right.
the,
Yeah.
in the upper grades.
Upper grades. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a great place to start. So gender versus sex. When we're talking about gender, we're talking about really socially defined behaviors. Because when you think about places, and I'm thinking of a kilt,
Right.
in our society, if a guy's walking around in a skirt, that's just not something that's acceptable.
Right.
Unless you're at a fish show.
Culture,
Right?
But you go to another culture and you have the traditional wear, the traditional garb is to wear a kilt.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is something that would be common for men to wear. And that's something I feel like we're all familiar with. It's just not something we're always thinking about when we think of that.
Sure.
So that's when we're talking about gender, we're talking about sex, we're talking about female, male body parts, we're talking about gender, we're talking about man, woman, and the things that come to mind when you think of a man and a woman, those stereotypes.
Right.
And so that's what we think about when we're thinking about gender. And I think the other thing that we need to really think about as well and to clarify has to do with gender identity versus sexual orientation.
Oh, okay.
And I think that this is also where a lot of confusion comes in. And when we're talking about gender identity, we're talking about how someone self-identifies, a subjective sense of gender that may fall into a spectrum of beliefs, that it might not just be man or woman, but falls into a spectrum. And I'm actually going to share a gender spectrum graphic with you
Okay.
that breaks down. There are a lot of Disney ones, and the one that I really like is from the movie Mulan. So if you're not familiar with that Disney movie, she really goes across the gender spectrum, and even her general wear is not necessarily super girly, but that's the expectation that her society has. And then she ends up dressing up as a man and acting as a man in order so her dad doesn't have to go off to war. So there's a really great gender spectrum graphic that I think helps to show that even we throughout the day or maybe the week and the month are not always necessarily in this binary idea of, man, woman.
And that's a story that's been around for a while, right? Like Mulan isn't a new Disney movie. Like just that story has been around for centuries.
Well, and you figure, that you have Joan of Arc, right? Like that same kind of story,
I mean, I'm just going to use myself as an example. I mean, throughout the week, I tend to like to dress up and wear skirts and heels and things like that to work, but it's not uncommon for my husband to come home and find me on top of the roof doing roofing. Here I am up there with my head, my noise canceling headphones on, the nail gun,
right.
And ripping off the roof and doing construction work. So
that's kind of the fluidity that you mean.
Correct. And that doesn't mean that I identify with being a man in any way, but there is that spectrum that we all tend to fall on just in our normal everyday behaviors.
Right.
So that's almost like you're a strong, confident woman where if you get home and something's off the roof that needs to be fixed, you don't have to wait for your husband to come home.
Right.
That role hasn't, that identity hasn't put you in a box that says, no, I can't do this.
Correct.
So
Just like in the summertime, I was the one that was working as an assistant principal and my husband's teacher. So he was at home taking care of our 3 children.
Yes, he
That
was.
doesn't make him any less manly,
Right.
because he was the one doing childcare for a few months. But
It's just
that's the role we tend to fell into just based on the different careers that we have.
He's just being a good parent.
Right. And I mean, I know at my house, like, I don't touch the riding lawnmower. That is my wife's riding lawnmower,
really?
and like that is her thing, man. She doesn't.
Okay.
Like it's hands off.
Yeah, but when people think about, all right, what chores, who's doing the yard work?
Well,
Society, once again, going back to that idea of gender and socially assigned behaviors, we automatically think, all right, it's yard work.
Yeah.
Something a man does.
and we just had a guy come out to look at an old mower to see if he could repair it. And he kept speaking to me the whole time, and I'm like, yo, man, you need to be talking to her because I know nothing about this, and I'm not going to make any decisions on the mower.
Yeah. See, I love mowing the lawn, so
I don't mind it.
But
This is her thing.
yeah. So that's cool.
That's cool. I like that, like, fluidity idea.
Yeah. So, and then the other piece to this, once again, in talking about some differences so that we are talking about the same thing, is the sexual orientation. So that is different from gender, because when we're talking about sexual orientation, we're talking about who we're attracted to.
Right.
The direction of one's sexual attraction. So transgender does not necessarily mean that you are, homosexual. Those are different things.
So maybe you identify as a woman, but your sexual attraction is still towards women.
Could be.
Right?
Yes.
Right. And I think that's a tough one for people to wrap their heads around initially, for
Yes.
sure.
And I think that a lot of people ask me, are there more, all of a sudden we have this term transgender.
Right.
And it almost didn't exist, or at least it wasn't as popular many years ago. So why is this such a popular thing at the moment? And why are people starting to identify if they weren't before? And I think that what was happening was there was a confusion between sexual orientation and gender. And many people in the LGBTQ community might have been, because they didn't know the term. And I think, now that there's more information at our fingertips, thanks to the internet and, things that we can find online and through television shows and Netflix specials. I just don't think that people knew what transgender was before to be able to say that I identify as that.
Well,
and a lot of the students who I've spoken to, or even from, documentaries and things that I've watched, said they, knew that they didn't fall under the normal binary gender, that they weren't identifying that way, but that maybe they thought they were gay until they found out that really what they were was transgender.
Right.
And that was enlightening to them. So I have a graphic. I'm actually going to share this with you guys as well. It's called the genderbread person.
oh wow.
Okay.
And it really shows the difference between, when we're talking about identity, when we're talking about gender, we're talking about brain, what we think we are.
Okay.
And, how we identify that way. When we're talking about attraction, we're talking about sexual orientation, that's something now we're thinking about with our heart, who we're attracted to. So that's when we're talking about sexual orientation. And when we're talking about sex, we're talking about the physical part.
Okay.
Right.
I'm going to share that with you guys so that you can post that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. When we tried to do this the first time, I said, hey, is this question okay? Like, is this a new phenomenon, or has this, always been going on? And you kind of just touched on that. Well, last night, before we started this, I'm at home watching the Comedy Central roast of Alec Baldwin. And, as soon as one of the guests comes up, it's Caitlyn Jenner. And as soon as I see her, that question pops into my head, because I guess, and Ron and I were talking before we started, so that's Bruce Jenner. And when we were kids, when we were in grade school, he was a guy on the Wheaties box.
Right.
But then, Ron was saying he's felt like that ever since he was a kid. So I crossed that question out and thought, I guess, and you just touched on it. Everything's now at our fingertips. So besides information, like, how about just support groups?
Right. I think people are more open.
Like, hey, he did it, so he's, if he has enough guts to get out there, then, maybe there's someone else that I could talk to, and I'm not the only one that feels this way. So
there's a great group out there called GLSEN, GLSEN, and that's how it's pronounced. And they do a national survey, a climate survey of schools. And what you just touched on is one of the, I guess, supports that can be put into place to help students to not feel harassed, intimidated, and bullied. And that's by having a support group in school. And they call it a Gay-Straight Alliance.
Yep.
We in my school chose to change the name of that. I work at a junior high school with 7th and 8th graders, and our students weren't coming out for our Gay-Straight Alliance because of the stigma behind the name.
Right.
So we had it, and the students wanted to participate in it, but they were kind of afraid to come to meetings because they didn't want to be known as, like, the quote-unquote gay kids. So we changed the name of the group to Generation Equality.
Ah, cool.
Okay.
And now just in our junior high, we have upwards to 30 or so students. It's one of our most popular groups for people to be a part of. And everybody who's there doesn't necessarily mean that they are part of the LGBTQ community. They might be allies of people.
Okay. Yeah. Friends.
And is supportive and goes to just show their support for the LGBTQ plus community.
Right. And I think that's the kind of thing, like, that wasn't, even, I mean, I'm an old man, but, 30 years ago when I was in high school, 35 years ago, that wouldn't have flown. Like, it just, there wasn't, nobody was going to come out in support of you, because then, you get a label and the bullying starts for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, you're afraid that somebody's going to make fun of you. And I mean, those things exist. The students are still afraid of those same things. I just think there's a different level of understanding, especially now with all of the harassment, intimidation, and bullying legislation and regulations. There's more of an understanding of, how we can support people.
Which is awesome. Yeah.
Most definitely. Fantastic. Well, I mean, and it's coming down, you're talking about being in a junior high. It goes down even further than that. So that, and that's, I mean, those kids are just learning the way the world works, and now it's almost like if you have someone that's not an understanding person, school's going to be a really tough environment for you. If you're confused and you're not working with someone that's open-minded and willing to help you, I think that could be a scary situation.
It absolutely can.
Ron brought up an article on, was that in a high school in Virginia?
It was a Washington Post article from, I think, last October, and it was 2 gym teachers. They were having a lockdown, and one of the students was transgender, and they sat the student in the hallway
during a lockdown
because they couldn't decide which locker room to let them come into for the lockdown. And I mean, the parent was upset, rightfully so, but she said, I don't blame necessarily the teachers. She said they've had no training. They've
Policy.
had, and they don't know what to do. And,
And that was great that the superintendent then commented, we need to go look at our policies.
Right.
Because if there's nothing in place for this type of situation, now it seems like we need something in place. So I guess the only good thing from that article, the child was upset. And the parents were upset, but the parents just wanted,
they want to change.
They're not placing blame on anyone. They just want their, I guess, daughter to be safe in school, which what parent doesn't. But then, like, other kids like their child, because.
Well, it's that idea of I just don't want this to happen to someone else, right? Like that's kind of where they came from, was a good place of I just want, this to be open, and now let's talk about it.
Right.
So, and then, you mentioned something. There's almost like these students need not necessarily an IEP, but it's almost like, sounds like administrators and teachers are coming together, so the student has a certain plan to be successful.
And so I think that that's one of the other things that schools can do and teachers can do in order to help their students is to, in our school, we have identified a person who is not just in charge of our generation equality group, but we have a counselor who specializes in, I'm going to say, all things LGBTQ, meaning that that it's an area of interest for them.
Right.
But they actually work with the students because, one of the things you also have to be careful about when you're talking about students who are identifying as transgender and they're saying, I might have the physical parts of a woman, but I identify with being a man, is you don't know how, especially at this age, how comfortable they are with communicating that at home.
Right.
Because sometimes what they're experimenting with or feeling, they feel more comfortable expressing at school, maybe because they're afraid of the repercussions at home.
Right.
So one of the things that we do is really do a home parent survey, like safety survey, to find out how much the parent knows and really gauge the students' feelings of what their parent's reaction is going to be. Because you also don't want to call and have a conversation with a parent and out a child in any way, whether it's transgender or, let them know that, your daughter's identifying and saying that she's a lesbian. Right. You don't want to call and out somebody and put them in a dangerous situation.
Sure.
So one of the things that our counselor does is, meets with the student and talks to them about that, finds out what they feel the reaction is going to be at home, and then puts a plan together so that we can bring student and parent together, so there's some understanding there. And that doesn't mean that you're going to make every parent accepting.
Sure. Right.
We experience that sometime where parents aren't, but you can't have somebody who's coming into school and saying, I feel as if I am a man. I feel as if I'm a man, even though I have female body parts. I want to use the boys' bathroom. Well, if they're trying to hide that from their parents, the parents are going to find out one way or another, because there's still the bigger school community. So so-and-so's parent, so-and-so is going to go home and say, did you know that Susie Superstar is actually using the boys' bathroom?
Right.
And starting to have some of those realistic conversations with the students to say that if this is what you're starting to express here, and you're starting to ask people to call you different names, or you want to use a different bathroom or whatever, your parents are going to find out. So how can we bridge that so that they find out from you in a safe, loving place, rather than from the rumor mill out in the community? And that is an important thing to happen too, to make sure that there's a plan in place to bring parents and to make sure that you're meeting the students' needs. And obviously, when we're talking to teachers, that's not going to be something that you're necessarily going to come up with a student. But if the student feels most comfortable talking to you about what's going on, being able to identify somebody in your school that's a resource for you that you can go to say, listen, so-and-so came to me about this. They want to be called a different name. How can I help them?
Right. Yeah. Or just, this person wants to have, different pronouns for them.
Yes.
Again, it's the same thing as using the bathroom. Somebody's going to go home and they're saying, like you said, they're calling Susie he every time they talk to her. What's going on? Right. Now, do you do that meeting in school? Will you guys, have parent and student come together in school?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome.
We'll do it whenever is convenient for the parent. And one thing you always have to keep in mind. So we're talking, let's touch on pronouns, because you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So it's not just maybe the names, but there are also gender neutral pronouns that some people want to be called.
Right.
Z is one of them.
Z. Okay.
Z, Zer. So, and there are, many that you can choose from, that students can say, I don't want to be Z, I want to be A, I want to be Tay, I want to be they.
Oh, geez.
Wow. Okay.
Right. And so part of this is in talking about what a teacher can do or a staff member can do is talking to the student, and once again, from a place of respect, from a place of care, and saying, what can I do to make this classroom comfortable for you? What do you want to be called? What pronouns do you want me to use? And then trying to be respectful of that. And that doesn't mean you're going to be perfect every time.
Sure.
Right.
Friends that I have that are transgender, every once in a while I'll call now a him, a her, just because they were a her forever to me.
Right.
And, they understand that you're still trying to be respectful.
Well, absolutely.
Nobody's perfect.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But one thing to always keep in mind is your policy, because your school policy may dictate certain things.
Right.
Keep in mind. And certain states, like our state, the state of New Jersey, came out with guidance for all schools on their transgender policy and said, you should do this. And one of the things it said was, if a student identifies, they are the only ones who can say what their gender is, and you should be respectful of the name that they want to be called, the pronouns they want to be called. But once again, just because that's guidance doesn't mean that every school district is adopting that as part of their policy.
Gotcha.
So for everybody listening, it is important to, as respectful as you want to be, make sure that you are following your district policy.
Right,
because,
most definitely. Well, because I know
something you're referring to.
I don't know about other districts, but I know in our district, I think the date's coming up. If not, it's already passed. That we signed something that says we've read all the policies,
right?
and so.
Yeah.
That's
something to think of. Yeah,
your policy,
right? And yeah.
Other things. When we're talking about inclusive classrooms, we already talked a little bit about using gender neutral terms in class, making sure that you have a variety of materials, not just the text that you're using, but maybe when you're talking about different things, that you have transgender neutral people that you're talking about, protagonists. And when we're talking about the LGBTQ plus community, maybe having some stories where, and this kind of just goes outside of transgender a little bit, but including people with, stories with two moms or two dads.
Yes.
and, being respectful of that as well. But I think one of the most important things is making your classroom a safe space. And that means being careful not to use derogatory terms or say negative things about transgender students or about students in the LGBTQ plus community.
Sure.
And stopping students or anybody else from using inappropriate terms as well.
Right.
In the junior high, I want to say the most popular term that I hear when students are putting each other down is saying, "Oh my God, that's so gay."
Right. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And when I talk to students, some of them don't even realize that they are saying something that could be hurtful to somebody who is gay.
Sure.
But Dr. Clark, everybody says that.
Right.
So, listening and keeping an ear out for that in your classroom to make sure that students are not using derogatory terms and not saying negative things as well. And when you look at some of the stuff that GLSEN has published about, the climate surveys, they'll tell you, the students will say that they hear staff members saying negative things
Really?
about the community. And so it might not be something that's happening in your classroom, but something to be thinking about and kind of to keep in the back of your mind or anybody who's listening, to be thinking about what you're saying and how you're coming off, because you want to be respectful, because students pick up when you're not.
No, most definitely.
Absolutely.
Most definitely.
Yeah. And if you go online, GLSEN publishes these signs that say this is a safe space inclusive for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender students and their allies. So you can just put one of these little signs and you can print it right off of the internet. You can print it right off of the internet and pop it on your door, on your wall in the classroom. And students who are looking for somebody to talk to will see this.
Right.
Now, will that be?
Will come to you if they, if they feel like they need somebody to talk to.
Will that be in your slideshow that you're going to send us?
I can send that to you. Yes.
Because we'll take, that'll be one of the pictures that we'll throw out there on YouTube.
And we'll put links to
GLSEN?
this stuff, in the show notes that we do as well. Yeah,
Definitely.
But, that's another thing too. When you put you might not be, especially the grades that you're teaching. I mean, Joe, in your third grade class, you're probably not talking too much about transgender things. You're not really talking you're not really talking a lot about attraction and things of that nature.
No.
But it's somebody who may be experiencing it, or a student who might see this and say, okay, Mr. DiPaolo is somebody that I can talk to.
Well, I watched Jennifer Savallo put on a conference last year, and she was talking to her daughter's teacher, and she had said something like, well, maybe you should do read alouds that might feature two moms. And the teacher says, why? No one has two moms. And then she replied with, my kid's got two moms. So
Right.
Even in third grade, you can still do that kind of story, because
absolutely.
we've had students
Sure.
come through with
two moms or two dads,
two moms or two dads. And I'll tell you what, I don't have one of those books.
Right.
But moving forward, like I need to bring in, it's something, because there's, I guess what she was putting out is all the kids in your class should feel like they're represented.
Well, and not only that, it then they know there's a kid in the class that has two moms. So when they're seeing a story about it, now they're saying like, oh, all right, this isn't, no matter maybe what I hear at home, that maybe it's not okay, or, which you never know. Well, Mr. DiPaolo thinks it's okay. He just read a story about it. So,
Yeah.
It just gets them open to, being inclusive and, having that.
Right. And thinking outside of, when our students come in, they know what they know from their own homes,
Right.
their own experiences. So, when we start sharing those things, we're sharing that not every family looks like yours.
Right.
Now, do you have any titles offhand? Do you have any?
I do not, only
Okay.
because, at least for elementary school, because I tend to deal more with the high school.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I'm sure a quick Google
Yeah.
search.
Talking about high school, Ursula Le Guin does a lot of gender neutral protagonists. So she would definitely be somebody at the high school level that I would suggest.
Okay.
But I'm sorry, elementary school is not necessarily my area of
Yeah,
expertise.
no.
No,
hey.
that's fine, because
And
like
We have the
Nothing off
internet.
top, I
Yeah,
can tell you.
yeah. We'll do a quick Google, and then maybe we'll try
We'll
and
put
get
some
some
links in. Yeah.
in our show notes.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
And actually, so the idea of going into your own classroom and looking at the library, books that you have, or looking at the collection of things that you're reading to your students. When I was at a conference last year, somebody was saying that they do that every year, but look at it from a different social justice perspective.
Cool.
So we're talking right now about doing that from the LGBTQ perspective, but maybe taking that same thing and looking at the different races that are represented next year.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's-
And each time that you're putting a book order together or putting an order together for materials for your classroom, trying to focus on something different each year, so
Right.
that by the end of a few years you are representing all facets of the people that are represented in our culture, our society, in the world, really.
and possibly in our class and in your
In your
classroom.
classroom,
Yeah.
And that's I think there was a high school in New Jersey just recently. They're mandating that, like they do women in STEM. They're mandating a LGBTQ people in STEM. That's kind of included in lessons.
So starting this up next school year, all students, I want to say in grades 3, 8, and 11. Don't quote me on those grades, but students, you are supposed to now in the state of New Jersey include any contributions from people in the LGBTQ community, but also in the special education.
Yeah.
Well,
Who would be considered that would qualify for special education services. Anybody with a disability,
Right, like a Temple Grandine or
integrated into the curriculum.
Yeah.
okay.
very cool.
So then districts will start to get state aid to start to make these changes.
Yes, but I think that what the state is saying, and there was actually a little bit of backlash from the things that I read recently.
Yeah, that's what on the radio.
That some people felt as if the people were pushing different sexual orientations on the students. But the idea of the legislation that came out of what we're supposed to include in the curriculum is just adding contributions that people from the different groups have made historically to our society, which I don't think that's something I think that should be included.
Right.
Most definitely.
That if you have somebody who had a disability that did something great, why aren't we talking about that?
Right.
It's something that's relevant to, that particular part of history that we're looking at. So same thing with the LGBTQ community.
Sure.
Just because somebody was in that community, why are we not talking about them?
Why are we not celebrating their accomplishments?
Correct.
Because of their gender identity, right?
Right.
And that's
Or
sexual orientation. Yeah,
which is going to be a form of discrimination.
Right.
Yes.
Very cool.
Man.
So other things to think about when we're talking about making our classrooms and our schools inclusive is, if somebody is asking you maybe to use a different bathroom, or, can I go to the nurse's office to use the bathroom instead? Sometimes we're making different assumptions about why they might want to go there. Maybe it's further and they're trying to get out of class, but you may have somebody who's going there because that's a single stall bathroom.
Yep.
Right.
They're not quite sure what's going on, and they're struggling with, maybe their gender and gender dysphoria, and that things aren't aligning. So kind of being sensitive to that as well, that if somebody is constantly asking you to use a single stall bathroom, that there could be something else behind it, and be respectful and allow them to do that until they're comfortable having a conversation about it.
Right.
And when we think about like dress code, to really try to enforce that based on identity and rather than sex. So rather than saying like, you're a guy, so you can't wear a skirt. Well, just because they're male does not necessarily mean that they feel as if they're a man. So trying to be respectful of that as well.
Right. So as long as the skirt adheres to the school's policy on skirts,
Yes,
anybody should be able to wear the skirt.
absolutely.
Yeah. That's. Yeah, and I think even I was when you said that, I was thinking of schools that have uniforms that are, boys wear khaki pants, girls wear the skirts. That kind of creates a little bit of a problem. It should be either everybody wears. I mean, the option should be either a choice or everybody wears khaki pants, and then there isn't an issue.
If you want to wear skirts, this is a plaid skirt you have to wear. If you want to wear pants, these are the blue
options.
or khakis you have to wear.
Yeah.
And
that's interesting.
And I think it's just it is interesting because it's so new, right? So and what happens when things are new? People don't like them because it's a change.
Right. Yeah.
And So other questions that generally come up when I'm having conversations about transgender students is, what if they change their mind?
Right. Yeah, I've heard that. Right.
Talking about students who are, people who are truly transgender, there is no changing their mind. And if we think about how hard, it is to not even, when you're in school, to not have the coolest clothes or to do something that's so against the grain.
Right.
For somebody to come out and say, I am actually not a girl, I'm a guy. That is so stigmatizing.
Right.
That, I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, they're not doing that for attention. They're doing that because they truly feel this way, and they understand the repercussions that they're going to get by their peers and by not going along, going on the grain and being quote unquote like everybody else is.
Right.
That, the likelihood of somebody making that up is, slim. I can't say it's never going to happen, but
sure.
But then, like with body chemistry changing, eventually, I mean, maybe things do change, right? I mean, that could happen.
Most of the time, if somebody truly is transgender, they know before they're even 5 or 6 years old.
Right.
They might not be able to tell you at that age that that's what they are, based on, what they've been exposed to, but they tend to know, I'm not really a guy, I'm a girl, or I'm not really a girl, I'm a guy.
Well, and that's,
so
I think,
they know very young, but that's not to say that they were thinking they were something else, and really start when they hit a certain age, when they hit that chemistry and go, you know what, I felt this way before, but now I really know that I'm not.
Right. And I think you hear that idea a lot, where people are like, well, they're going to do that to use the bathroom of the, like you said, what's going to come along with that isn't worth, right. As far as what they feel to use the other sex bathroom.
Right.
I mean,
and if you really have somebody who is 100%, that has made a transition, is transgender, walk into your school, you wouldn't even necessarily know
right.
that they have different body parts.
Right.
Because if they've made the transition, a lot of times what we're talking about are, and what we experience are students who, they came in as one thing and now they're starting to experiment and go, wait a second, this is not who I am, and make the transition while they're in school. But if you have somebody who's transgender and they have made the transition to being a man or a woman, and I don't necessarily mean transsexual or changing body parts, but have made that transition, they're going to walk into school and you're just going to assume that that's what they are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Based on how they're acting, based on the clothes that they're wearing, their hairstyle. Once again, all of those things that going back to the beginning of our conversation,
right.
that we talked about when we think about different genders, they're going to walk in and you're just going to see this boy or this girl.
Right.
It's heavy. I mean,
there's a lot.
It's a lot. But you know what? It's like, I look at the clock on the podcast and it's like 46 minutes, but it almost feels like no time's passed because there's so much information, and you're kind of like, yeah, man, I need to take a look at what I'm doing in my classroom to make sure that everybody is feeling comfortable in my classroom.
Most definitely.
And I know a lot of times people, and I just want to reiterate this again, a lot of times when I speak to, whether it's administrators or teachers or support staff, people will say, well, I'm afraid to ask the question, or I'm afraid
right.
to say something.
Sure.
But if you think about yourself, wouldn't you rather have somebody ask you and clarify with you what you would prefer, rather than not know and make assumptions?
Right.
So if you're approaching a student from that respectful, caring place and say, listen, you asked, I noticed this, or you asked me to call you this, you asked me to call you Jim instead of Kim. Is there a different pronoun that you would like me to use as well?
Right.
Or are you comfortable with me continuing to use the, female pronouns? You're showing them respect in that way.
Right.
I wouldn't have that conversation in front of the whole class, obviously.
Right.
One-on-one conversation, pull them aside, or have a conversation in the hallway, or one of the other students have left, have that conversation, or in guidance.
Sure.
But I don't think any student is going to say, I can't believe they asked me that. I mean, if they are expressing that to you and asking you to use a different bathroom, or asking you to call them a different name or a different pronoun, they'd rather you ask questions and be respectful in that way.
Right. It's just going to make them feel more comfortable.
Correct.
In the long run. Yeah.
Man.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Your expertise, I thank you so much for, just making us think and hopefully making a lot of people think.
And I know one thing, my library is going to change.
Right.
So I know one of the things, we have our back to school night that's going to start about 6:15. So one of the first things I'm going to do is do that Google search.
Right.
And maybe try and find some read alouds with 2 moms and 2 dads.
Right.
And just start there and I know Twitter's a great place.
Yeah.
So
you put out a request for books, elementary books with 2 moms or 2 dads on Twitter. You're going to get some response.
Well, most definitely.
Yeah.
So,
I would do the same thing when thinking about maybe gender neutral characters as well, because
Right.
when we're talking about gender, that once again, that is different from the sexual orientation. So we are talking about different things, but it's all in the same community.
Sure.
So, putting out something about, a gender neutral protagonist. And,
Right.
and I can tell you that even in my daughter's library, my daughter's 2.5, there are some books that I read that you can't tell from the pictures or from the story if this is a boy or girl.
Right.
And I like that.
Well, it also makes them use their imagination as to what they think, which is, just them using their imagination and
you're not setting those gender roles.
Right.
Right.
That's awesome.
Man. Kim, this is definitely our longest episode.
Yep.
But I think, we could probably keep talking, right?
Right.
I mean,
When I
there's
do presentations on this, it's usually an hour and a half and we can keep going. So this is just really the tip of the iceberg of it. But I'm glad that, thank you, number one, for having me, because this is how we communicate. We get the word out, we spread support, we raise awareness so that our students feel supported. And, that's what we're all here for.
Yeah,
we're here
absolutely.
to do what's best for our students.
most definitely.
And and this is what's going to be best for our students in the LGBTQ community, when people know what to do to make them feel comfortable in school and in class. And Joe, when you get that list together of books, can you shoot that my way? Because I guarantee you're not the first person who's going to ask me that question of
Definitely.
what books can I share? And now I can say, here are some books that would be appropriate at the elementary level.
Right.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely, Kim. And like when we get all this done, can we throw this out on Twitter at like because Pinelands is on Twitter, right? Like, is that cool? Where and then, do you have a Twitter account for Pinelands?
We do, and ours is at Pinelands.
Okay.
JHS.
Okay.
I'll
And
throw that your way so that you have all of our, because we hashtag we are PRJHS. We have a few different.
okay, so then I'll get that list going. I'll email the list to you, and if you want to respond with the little hashtags and stuff like
Absolutely.
that, I think Ron, you said it's going to come out in October.
Look like October 21st. We'll probably have this episode coming out.
Great.
Yeah.
Once it gets done, when we get it in Google, we'll send you the link so you can at least listen to it.
Yeah, if you want to preview it or anything.
I don't want to listen. That's fair.
I'm never going to come to teachernerds.com again. Oh, man.
I really do appreciate, like I said, I got passionate about this because I want to make sure that we're supporting all of our students, and I felt as if this was an area that we could do better on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I want to spread the word is what we can do, and this is how it starts. So,
And it kind of fits in, like our district is doing, cultural response, being cultural responsive and inclusive, and this it slides right in.
Falls under
it's
that umbrella.
everybody. All right.
everybody.
Yeah.
Kim, thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm gonna leave you guys with a term that you probably didn't even know that you were, and it's one of my favorite things when we talk about this. Somebody who is not in the LGBTQ, identify as LGBTQ plus, not that they wouldn't be in the community, because allies can be in the community, but if your sex and your gender match,
Right.
then you're cisgender.
Cisgender.
Like SIS?
CISGENDER, and that's somebody whose gender identity corresponds to their birth assigned category, to the parts that they were born with. So I think that's always funny, because when I bring that up, people go, I didn't even know I was cisgender. So if you didn't know that, you guys are cisgender.
And
Nice.
Does it, like the CIS, is that an acronym for anything? Is it short for anything?
I'm certain that it is, but I don't have the answer to that.
Okay.
Google it, man.
I know. Kim, like I ask those silly questions because
That's not a
like,
silly question.
Well,
You want to
That's a
know?
good one.
I want to know. Inquiring minds want to
Yeah.
know. Well, Kim, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
We
Really
appreciate
appreciate it.
everything. I'll send you that list, and you send us the stuff back, and
For sure.
we can kick this out there.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks, Kim.
Thank
Talk
you.
to you guys later. Bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, Joe. So that was awesome.
Ron, I'm mind blown.
Yeah. I mean, again, just it makes you want to go back to your, like you said, look at your room, look at what you're doing in your lessons, and kind of just make sure that, man, I want to make sure that I want everybody to feel included,
Yep,
and everybody to feel loved, and everybody to feel like they're part of my classroom.
Most definitely, because if they don't come in comfortable, anything you're trying to teach them, it's not even worth it because they're focused on something else. They don't feel safe.
Right.
Something's going on either outside. So
Well,
you
it's
want that
that-
safe learning environment. You have to include all the kids.
Right? Kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
There you go.
Right?
Yep.
So hopefully everybody enjoyed that episode.
That was a long one. Thanks for sticking with
Yeah.
us.
I'm Ron Nober.
I'm Joe DiPaolo.
We are the Teacher Nerds. And Joe?
Nerds with a Z, Ron.
That is Nerds with a Z. Check us out on teachernerds.com. Check us out on Twitter at Teacher Nerds, Instagram at Teacher Nerds Podcast, and check out the Flipgrid on teachernerds.com. Check out the Teacher Nerds store on teachernerds.com. Get that Teacher Nerds gear. All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Teacher
Bye.
nerds knocking on your door. Open up, let's take your teaching further than before. Give it a try, don't be shy, there's nothing there to lose. Worst thing that happens, kids get pain on their shoes. We're talking teacher nerds, I'm talking teacher nerds.